anywhere in recorded history. And so that is what got me thinking about Polybius is, it seems to me, all of the political winds are in our favor right now. The economy is trash under Biden and Harris. The foreign policy has gone completely to hell in a handbasket after Trump brought peace to the Middle East, for goodness sakes. The immigration crisis is driving people crazy. The domestic social issues, notably transing the kids, is really arousing passions in a lot of people, even on the center left. So it's all bad for the country, but it's good for Republicans. Everything is working in our favor right now. Kamala Harris is totally unpopular. She's never won a single vote in a primary when she ran for president. They swapped out their nominee last minute. I'm just saying every single thing. I could be here for 2 hours talking about all of the advantages that we have in this election, which then makes me think, if we cannot win in these circumstances, even President Trump, some people don't like President Trump, and he has more sympathy than he's ever had because they almost blew his head off twice. If we can't win in these circumstances, can we just not win? Meaning if we can't win in 2024, is it possible the referendum is not on Trump or Kamala, but it's just a referendum on the kind of regime that we think we live in?
I think that's extremely well put. One thing that will really, as they say, blackpill me about a Kamala Harris victory is that she really does represent the avatar of our feckless elites. She has no accomplishments. She's never won a single primary election. She is effectively a hollow human shape in which is poured the pure desire for power for its own sake. And that is a perfect embodiment of the larger network of people who don't care about this country, don't want us to succeed, don't want average Americans to have a country that serves them, but are rather in hock to their own abstruse theories and their own political power. And she is basically just an empty vessel for that machine. And so it's in some ways extraordinarily fitting that she's the person that Donald Trump is up against. During the primaries for this election, I used to think that the face-off we really deserved was Ron DeSantis versus Governor Gavin Newsom of California. I thought these two governors represent the two red and blue state approaches that have had exactly the wages you would expect them to have. Florida is thriving, it's open, it's free, it's like full of kind of in fact, a multicultural but nevertheless Americanist verve. California is a giant sinkhole on the shore of the country. You and I both fled it. We're both California refugees. We know whereof we speak. And I thought what we really need is for these two guys to represent these two approaches to American government. And so when it turned out to be Trump Biden and then Trump Kamala, at first I thought, we've really kind of gotten stuck here in a sort of like we're reliving our traumas or something from the past era. I don't think that anymore. I actually think this is the exact election we deserve. It's not the election I wish we had. It's not the candidates I wish we were watching face off against each other. But in fact, it does plausibly represent the conflict at the heart of the country right now. On the one hand, you have a kind of pandering, racist, tribalist, classist, anti-meritocratic regime whose representatives are effectively faceless, who can be swapped out literally at will, ad libitum. They can just drop somebody else into that empty spot. And on the other hand, you have this messy, scrappy, relentless, uncouth, and utterly lovable rascal, right? This total King David style kind of, bulldozer.
Literally dancing before the Lord. Literally with this thing and
Right. And as just every bit as imperfect a vessel as David was, backed by all of the smartest people in the country, all the most interesting thinkers in the country, and an actual representative sample of the populace, the people of the country. Trump has an actual Republican coalition, not in the capital R sense of this is the Republican candidate, but in the small r sense that he represents all three major class interests within a republic. He has the genuine elite are behind him in the person of J.D. Vance, for instance, actual smart people with or without credentials. The sort of power brokers of the country who are interested in making genuine moves in the electorate, which is, or rather in the executive branch. Mm-hmm. And then a sampling of the public that genuinely represents, I think, the American spirit. And yeah, we're actually sort of seeing which of those two things, if our system is working, it's obvious which of those two things should succeed. It's the representative sample of the public will. If it's not, then yeah, like we can have elections or not have elections. It really doesn't matter.
So then I want to get to your prediction, because your point on the diversity, the proper variety, Republican diversity of the Trump coalition is impressive. I was at the MSG rally in New York, and a black guy, pointed out to me, he said, this is the most diverse movement in American politics. And he was speaking not of your class distinction, which I think is an important one, also maybe a more important one, but also he just pointed out, there was a lady in a hijab and a dude waving an Israel flag like 40 feet away from each other. And they both had good reason to support Trump, actually, to say nothing of all the races and sexes and, all the rest of it. That's there. You don't see that kind of vibrancy on Kamala's team. But then, okay, it all sounds good. It all sounds really good, Dr. Klavan. In theory, I agree with you on what the election represents, what the stakes are. I agree with you. This is the fight that we should be having. This is the appropriate fight for this moment.
Greetings.
Are we going to win?
Neither the pollsters, nor the pundits, nor perhaps even the angels in heaven, but only God the Father knows what's. I genuinely believe. I've been reading the polls. I've been watching as each new result comes in from early voting. I've been scrutinizing the tea leaves with the best of them. And all I can conclude is that nobody knows a thing.
Nobody knows
seems
anything.
Like all our categories are completely exploded. So, having said that, and throwing caution to the winds, I'm very hopeful. I'm an optimist about this election. What you have said about the a word that was really misused in this election, the joy, the energy, the vibrancy, right? Which was astroturfed into the Kamala Harris presidency when she first, or rather candidacy, when she first emerged, but was really only there as an attempt to steal something that is one of Trump's actual best qualities. That plus the genuine, guys like us who are sort of really invested in our philosophy and our principles, we often get mad at Trump about this. And it's funny because people will come up to me and they'll say, like, how can you support Donald Trump, this abortion-hating, gay-banning villain? And I'll say to these people, I know a lot of people who wish that were an accurate depiction of Donald Trump. You don't understand that the Republican, hard right now is very upset with Trump because he's not that guy at all, right? He's this sort of expansive. I mean, the McDonald's news moment, it was the most perfect embodiment of who this guy is. I still think that that's what the country wants and is ready for. You probably didn't wake up this morning and expect to discuss the Edict of Caracalla on your podcast, Michael.
Of course I did. Every morning.
Of course, I'm sorry.
That expectation.
Well, I was under the impression that nobody expects the Edict of Caracalla, but I guess that's the Spanish Inquisition, which you probably also have discussed. Now that I think about it on this show, the Edict of Caracalla is this sort of obscure 3rd century AD legal reform by Emperor Caracalla, a notorious tyrant, which finally gave up the ghost and attributed citizenship to everybody, effectively every male under Roman jurisdiction. They had very elaborate, kind of complex system, sort of like some of the stuff we do in our territories and outlying, quasi states where some people were citizens, some people had various rights.
Right.
Caracalla was just like, no, everybody is a citizen. Why did he do it? He did it to bulk up his military, that is to get warm bodies who could serve in the Roman military, and to increase his tax base. In other words, the most notorious tyrants in history have been interested in importing mass citizenry in an indistinguishable wash of people for their own craven purposes. I'm not saying that this aspect of history repeats itself. It's just I'm saying that this aspect of history repeats itself. So you're right. The big kind of worry that I have is that there's already been such a craven, cynical, disgusting, self-interested, and most of all, dishonest, hypocritical effort to kind of swell the ranks of the voter rolls with people from God knows where, who may or may not be perfectly decent people, but are obviously being used in this political ploy by the Democrats. That gives me, that keeps me up at night. But I'm hopeful. I've got my first cup of covfefe, and I'm hoping that it's going to be the first of
one of many, many more today. I agree with you on that. I think realistic note. I wouldn't say on that, jokingly on that happy note or something. That's a realistic note. The hour is quite late. This stuff has been going on for a long time. However, we're hopeful because hope is a theological fact, and there are ultimate causes of hope, and I think there are even immediate causes of hope in this election. Though none of us knows, at least not until right now. Everyone needs to go out right now, right this second, and get Spencer's book, Light of the Mind, Light of the World, which is probably the best book I've read in 10 years. Certainly that has come out recently. I guess I've read, like Tolstoy recently, but it's up there. but this book is absolutely magnificent. Light of the Mind, Light of the World. And you should follow Spencer's podcast, Young Heretics. Dr. Klavan, thank you for coming on the show.
Sir, it's always a pleasure. Thanks, Michael.
See you later. Now, I believe I have one last guest before I have to give up this show to Ben. Is that correct? I think I have one last guest who is somewhere in my building right now. And that would be, well, we don't have her yet. Okay, she's playing hard to get. That's totally fine. And I do want to take at least a few questions from the chat. Vote for President Covfefe, says Sniper. So true. Catherine, hope is one of the 3 theological virtues. That is true. And it's a fact because it's based on a real event that happened. Got to go see you guys tonight, says Conservative of Family. There are going to be people, if you're like me, at least, good for you if you can take a break from watching the election come in. You're like me. I have been watching stuff happening, just refreshing my feed since last night when I was writing my show. I was sitting out with a cigar. I've just been refreshing that's probably going to be the case until they call it. So if you can go take a nap or something or go do your work, then that's probably a good idea at some point today, maybe around lunch. Take a little break for lunch and then you can come right back to it. But we will be with you all day long in one form or another. We have Mary Morgan. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so pleased to bring on my friend of Timcast fame. That would be Mary Morgan. Mary Morgan, thank you for being here.
Hi, Michael. You're so close yet so far away.
I know. Well, I was wondering where you are. Are we coming to you live from a black hole or something like that? Where are you?
I don't even know. This is I'm in a broom closet somewhere.
Whoa, man. That might be my old studio, I think. Mary Morgan, you're a Ute. You're a young lady. You've got your finger on the pulse of what all the cool, hip, young, jive-talking kids are doing. What is going to happen tonight?
I'm so glad that you're looking to me for insight about all of the cool, young, hip people. I can enlighten you about what all of the white girl Gen Z voters are thinking about. And I hate to say it, but they are not going to be voting for Trump in droves. They are so activated by the issue of abortion. And I'm still thinking about this so much because it came up on Timcast IRL last night, just how much this issue has activated female voters. And I've noticed that really Kamala is campaigning to women and seniors, but to women. And Trump is trying to campaign to everyone, which is what you should do if you're a populist. But it seems to be whatever she is doing is working at least to activate those female voters. And it's really their number one issue. And people find it really disturbing, as they should, if you really think about what that means.
Yes, I saw these ads that, they say, think of your daughters, man. And when you go into the voting booth, think of your daughters and your granddaughters and their rights. And I was talking this over at home last night, and that ad is basically saying, hey, men, if Trump wins, Again, this is also kind of based on just Kamala's pandering of her campaign, you know, pushing weird sex stuff and contraception and abortion and all this. But what the ad itself is saying is, hey, men, if Trump wins, your daughter won't be able to be sexually used and abused by lots and lots of men, and she might not be able to kill your grandchild. That's why you have to vote for Kamala. And I thought, you know, that's like a pretty crazy appeal, man. If I were a man, I mean, again, I'm not a man like Tim Walz or whatever, you know, I'm not that new kind of man that they're trying to create. But if I were, that would be really scandalous to me. To say, hey, the chief appeal is vote for Kamala so your daughter can be super promiscuous and abused by all sorts of anonymous men, and then maybe if she becomes pregnant so that she can murder her child, your grandchild. I don't know. That would have me, there would be a Michael-shaped hole in the wall so that I could go run and vote for Donald Trump.
Yeah, you're right. It's super disturbing, and it's not just the ads that are pushing those ideas. But when I saw them, I was just like, oh yeah, your daughter getting an abortion one day, that's just every father's dream, right? Where is this coming from? And I really just think it's a spiritual problem. And again, this came up on IRL last night. We were talking about how people aren't having kids as much. And I think Phil pointed out that there aren't pro-family policies, but really it's got to start with the culture and these cultural attitudes. They are clearly targeting people with those cultural attitudes with those ads. And they do exist, unfortunately. Those attitudes do exist. And the reason why abortion is so prized in our culture, especially by women, partly it's because of fear. There's a lot of fear about violence, lack of resources, survival in our progressive future. But most of all, it's about how it represents our sexual license. And this is the key to our sexual license.
Yeah,
and we've decided that that's the trade-off we want to make for it.
This is why the left needs abortion, is because the left is pro-sexual revolution. So if you do it in the old way, which is, you know, if you want to do that deed, you have to be married, and if you do it and you become pregnant and you're not married, then you actually probably should just get married. And but if you don't believe that, if you're going to try to blow up that whole thing, the fundamental political unit, which is the marriage, then you can try to do it with contraception, but contraception is not foolproof. Contraception, you know, people get pregnant even on contraception. And so then you need that stopgap in order to really pretend that men and women are exactly the same and they're not complementary and marriage is unnecessary and a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. If you're going to pretend that, as the Democrats have for 60 years now or 50 years now, then you need that final measure that says, okay, and you know, if you do get pregnant, we'll kill your kid for you, and it's totally fine. And it has activated women. I wonder, though, especially for these younger women who are voting on this issue, I kind of wonder if it's the younger women, and also I've noticed some like boomer women who came up during the 60s and 70s when abortion was the hot thing. A lot of them, I think, in my experience, they are more left-wing. They're more likely to support Kamala over an issue like that than, say, the millennial women who are kind of getting a little bit more trad, or you're seeing a return to religion among certain millennials. You know, it's become almost a meme, but you do see it in real life. I wonder, though, have these people ever met a woman who had an abortion? I know a number of women who have had abortions. All of them have been traumatized by it. Every single one of them. And some of them are open about that fact, and some of them are just kind of white-knuckling it, and they're in denial, but it's obvious to anyone who has eyes. Like, could you imagine you're a father or a grandfather or something, and you listen to that Kamala ad, and you think, yes, what I really want for my daughter or granddaughter is to have an abortion. Even forget about the baby for a moment. I want my daughter or granddaughter to live with an unspeakable trauma for the rest of her life.
Mm-hmm. And if we're to believe the statistic that I believe it's 1 in 4 women in this country have gotten an abortion, possibly multiple, that is incredibly common. And I feel bad sharing this personal anecdote because it makes me look bad. But I recently drove past this pro-abortion rally where all of these older women that you were talking about, these boomers, were holding up pro-abortion signs, and one of them said abortion is healthcare. And I just threw up a middle finger at this lady, and I should not have done that.
It was an expression of passion.
I realized, like, immediately afterwards, the reason you shouldn't do that is because a lot of these older women, as you said, are white-knuckling on the issue because it personally has affected them. Not through someone they know, but themselves. A lot of them have gotten abortions decades past, and maybe multiple, and it deeply affects them. The shame is palpable, and it gets expressed in these displays of exhibitionism and pride and shout your abortion. So it's really sad, it's tragic, and their feelings of shame are being exploited by these political ads.
And by the devil. I mean, this is one of the tricks of the devil. It's like a really basic trick, but you know, the devil whispers in your ear and says, hey, that thing, that sin you want to commit, it's no big deal. It's not a problem. Don't worry. Just do it. And then the minute you do it, the devil says, by the way, that's completely unforgivable. You're dead. You're toast. Right. You're done. And so the thing is, for a conservative, certainly for Christians, we would say, you can be forgiven. There's really nothing that you can do that you can't be forgiven for. Just ask forgiveness. Just repent. But in order to do that, you have to look yourself in the mirror and admit that you've done a horrible, horrible thing. And I think a lot of people don't want to do that. And then you've got a political movement that's pandering to you and saying, no, it's actually great. It's good. That shame you feel, push it deep, deep down. Baby, shout your abortion, vote, forget about the economy, forget about inflation, forget about your national borders, forget about all the wars that could start and have started after they booted Trump out. Forget about all that stuff. All that matters is that you not acknowledge that human life is dignified and ought to be protected all along the way, especially innocent human life. So, okay, on that, all those happy notes, Mary Morgan, do you have any predictions, not just for the young women, but do you have predictions for how the night goes?
Well, I just saw that baby hippo, Moo Dang, was presented with a couple of watermelons. Mm-hmm. And one of them said Trump and the other said Kamala, and she picked Trump. So she doesn't have a track record. I think she was born like 4 months ago, but I think I'm just going to go with that. Last night, I said that I thought Kamala was going to win. I take it back. I was just saying words. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think Trump is going to win. And it's because of something you said, like, his story can't end like that.
It can't end.
He's such a mythological person. His story just doesn't, it will not end with a loss. So I'm going to go with that belief.
Yeah, that's good. But I'm really pleased to see the Moo Dang endorsement because, you know, just in the last 24 hours, we got the Rogan endorsement. That was big. We got the Megyn Kelly endorsement. That was a big one.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes' mom endorsed. That was big. But I think a lot of people were waiting to see if Moo Dang would make a formal endorsement and which way, pardon, I'm just so excited, my hands are going all over the place, which way Moo Dang would go. And so I'm pleased to see, you know, Moo Dang is not afraid of being canceled, is not afraid of retribution from the left.
Watch your back.
Clearly, without question.
Yeah.
Moo Dang, Mary Morgan, and everyone in between. Mary Morgan, thank you so much. I think I'll be seeing you later, is that right?
Yes, definitely.
Actually, I'll probably see you later just in the break room because, you know, they're kind of around here. The Timcast is all over. Okay, before I finally hand this over to Ben, I do want to at least speak to the crème de la crème just a little bit more because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm so glad that we're out on X and we're out on YouTube right now and people are glued to their screens all day, of course, and you're going to be refreshing. That's good, but we got to take questions only from the Daily Wire Plus members. So if you want to get your questions in there, express your opinions, your passions, your irascible appetites, you need to become a Daily Wire Plus member. Great way to get your Mayflower cigars, great way to get, you know, all sorts of stuff, the candles. Sniper says, Mary Morgan is dark MAGA and also lovely. She is dark MAGA in that black box that we've locked her in to do these hits. Let's see. Vote for Trump in Minnesota. So true. That would be great. One time I was sitting with Ed Rollins, who was Ronald Reagan's campaign manager in 1984. That was the re-elect. And officially, Reagan won 49 states. The only state that he lost was Walter Mondale's home state. Walter Mondale was the opponent of Minnesota. And Ed told me, he said, you know, I actually think we won Minnesota too, but we didn't want to look greedy and sue for it, so we, accepted 49 states. But he thought that Trump won Minnesota, and there was just some shenanigans going on. So I don't know. That would be absolutely magnificent if Trump could win Minnesota. I'm not counting on it, but Dr. John, Richard Gere just endorsed Harris. Such great memes. Can you say gerbil? That's not nice. Richard Gere is actually a cousin of mine. This is true. I'm not making this up. Richard Gere is a descendant of Lydia Fuller. Lydia Fuller married Simon Knowles. I'm sorry. He's a descendant of Lydia's mother, who is also Lydia, I think, something like that. But anyway, he's not a Knowles descendant, but he is a descendant from my Mayflower ancestors, like my Mayflower cigar. And he and I had the same acting teacher when I was a young boy, and he was much younger. How confident are you that Trump will win? Says Mins. Not confident. I'm hopeful. I'd put a small amount of money on it. The reason it's so difficult to make election predictions this time is because the Democrats changed all the rules last time. That's the real reason. There are other reasons. It's a tight race. It's a crazy election. Things have happened that haven't happened in the past. Recently, Trump was nearly assassinated. The Democrats swapped out their nominee. They're just when you don't have a long track record, when there's not a lot of precedent, then it's hard to make predictions based on old models. But also the Democrats just changed all the rules. So when you have wider mail.
Cincinnati, Ohio's J.D. Vance now is about to cast his vote. He may give a comment or two before he goes in. So, he just voted. Here we go. Let's listen.
All. Appreciate you coming out to see one of the great traditions, of course, in American democracy. I, of course, voted for Donald Trump and myself. So did my wife, and we also, for all the locals out there, we voted for Bernie Moreno for the United States Senate. And if you want the policies of Donald J. Trump in the United States Senate, then Bernie Moreno is the only candidate in this race who I think is the candidate of peace and prosperity for the United States Senate. So I hope people will get President Trump over the finish line. I hope people here in Ohio will get Bernie Moreno over the finish line. Look, I feel good. You never know until you know, but I feel good about this race. I felt good about my own race a couple of years ago when I voted in this exact same spot. Hopefully it goes as well for President Trump and me as it went for me a couple of years ago in the state of Ohio. So I appreciate you guys being here. Happy to take a few questions. You obviously can see my kids bouncing around here. There's Usha. And, we'll take a few questions, but we're going to hit the road, go back home, and then head off to Palm Beach.
Senator, regardless of the results tonight, half the country probably won't be satisfied with the results.
Sure.
What's your message to them, potentially your supporters, if it doesn't go the way that they wanted it to?
Well, look, I think our message is, first of all, we do expect to win, but obviously no matter who wins, half the country, as you said, is going to be at least partially disappointed. I think my attitude is the best way to heal the rift in the country is to try to govern the country as well as we can, create as much prosperity as we can for the American people, and remind our fellow Americans that we are all fundamentally on the same team, however we voted. I certainly hope you vote for